Smoke covered the sky like a heavy blanket. The ground of Varka's broken moon was silent, filled with the wreckage of ships, machines, and weapons. Craters marked the place where fire had fallen from orbit. The war between the humans and the Jarn had ended months ago, but the damage still remained. This moon was one of the last battle zones, now left forgotten by both sides. Bren moved carefully through the ruins. He was a human engineer, not a soldier, but he wore light armor and carried a scanner. His job was to search for any working parts or survivors among the wreckage. Most of the time, there was nothing, just metal and silence. But today felt different. He walked past a half-buried shuttle and noticed something strange near a fallen hill of metal. A soft light blinked beneath a broken piece of armor. Bren knelt and cleared the dust away. Beneath the armor, he found a body, a tall figure in dark, curved plates. It was a Jarn. He hesitated. The Jarn had once been the enemies of Earth. They were strong, fast, and known for their living armor. This one seemed unconscious or dead. Its armor was cracked on the chest, where green fluid had leaked, but the light in the suit was still faintly glowing. Bren checked his scanner. Life signs were weak, but present. He looked around. There were no other signs of movement. He took a breath, then pulled out his toolkit. "I must be crazy," he whispered. He worked fast, cleaning the cracked section of armor. The material was alive in some way, part of the Jarn's body, but also machine. He used a sealant mix from his kit normally used for human tech, but he adjusted it carefully. The patch held, the crack began to close, and the light on the armor grew brighter. Suddenly, the figure stirred. The armor shifted like skin, and the alien opened her eyes. They were a soft silver, clear and sharp. She looked at him, confused at first, then alert. Her voice was calm but strong. "You sealed the crack." Bren stepped back, unsure if she would attack. "I thought you were dead," he said. "I didn't mean harm." The Jarn sat up slowly. Her armor moved with her like a second body. She placed one hand on her chest where the crack had been. She looked at him again, watching his face. "You are human," she said. "You helped me. Why?" "You were dying." "I don't know. It just felt like the right thing," Bren replied. The silence between them grew heavier. He expected her to stand, draw a blade, or vanish into the shadows. But instead, she asked something unexpected. "Do you trust me, human?" Bren blinked. "What? I am not your enemy," she said. "Not anymore. I left the Empire. They now hunt me as well." Bren didn't know what to say. He had spent years hearing about the Jarn. He had lost friends in the war. Yet here he was, helping one, and she was asking him to trust her. "Why should I?" he asked quietly. The Jarn stood, her tall frame casting a shadow over the broken ground. She did not raise a weapon or threaten him. Instead, she looked toward the horizon, where the ruins of the battlefield stretched for miles. "There is something coming," she said. "Something worse than war. If I tell you, they will try to silence me. But if you help me, I can stop it." Bren still had his scanner in hand. He checked again. Her heartbeat was steady now. Her weapons were offline. She could have killed him already if she wanted to. But she didn't. "What's your name?" he asked. She paused. "Tira." He nodded. "I'm Bren." Tira looked at him again. There was no anger in her eyes, only a strange kind of calm. "Do you trust me, Bren?" He thought for a long moment. Round them, the ruins of war remained. Two sides had fought with all their power, but now the choice was his alone. Finally, he said, "Not yet, but I'm willing to listen." Tira gave a slow nod. "That is enough for now." The wind blew across the battlefield, carrying dust and ash into the sky. Bren didn't know what path he had just stepped onto, but something deep inside told him this was no longer about sides. It was about something larger, and it had just begun. Bren followed Tira through the quiet remains of the battlefield. The sky above the moon was still cloudy with smoke, but she moved as if she knew exactly where she was going. Her steps were steady, and her senses sharp. Her armor, once cracked, had slowly started to heal with the seal Bren gave her, even in silence. She carried herself with the strength of a warrior. Bren kept a small distance behind her. He still wasn't sure why he was following a former enemy, but something inside told him to stay. Her voice still echoed in his mind. Something worse is coming. He held his scanner close, watching for any life signs or movement. Tira suddenly raised her hand, signaling him to stop. She crouched low and scanned the area with her visor. There are Jarn scouts nearby, she whispered. I thought the war was over, Bren said. For humans, yes, but not for me. I left their control. I carry secrets they do not want shared, Tira replied. Bren stayed quiet. He had 100 questions, but none of them seemed more important than staying alive. Tira took out a small device from her belt. It glowed softly and showed a path through the wreckage. She pointed toward a large hill made of broken ships. There is a hidden tunnel beneath that wreck. It leads to an old bunker. I need to reach it. Inside are the records of what they're planning. If I get them, I can prove I'm telling the truth, she explained. And then what? Bren asked. Then I give the warning. With or without your people's help. They moved quickly toward the hill. The metal under their feet groaned with every step. Once they reached the side of the wreck, Tira began to clear away debris. Bren helped, using his tools to loosen old panels. After a few minutes, they revealed a round hatch. Tira pressed her hand on it, and the metal shifted, opening slowly. Inside, the tunnel was dark and narrow. Bren pulled out a small light from his pack. Tira walked ahead without needing one. Her armor lit softly from within. The air inside was dry and cold. Old wires hung from the ceiling, and rust covered the walls. As they moved deeper, Tira spoke. The Jarn Empire once used this place to test early versions of their weapons. It was later turned into a vault. Only a few knew its true purpose. I was one of them. What kind of weapons? Bren asked. Not weapons of war. Weapons of control. Before he could ask more, a sound echoed behind them. A clicking noise. Fast and sharp. Run. Tira said. They both dashed forward as metal legs crawled down the tunnel behind them. Bren looked back and saw a Jarn scout drone, its eyes glowing red, its limbs cutting into the walls as it chased them. Tira stopped suddenly, turned, and raised her arm. A pulse of energy shot from her gauntlet, striking the drone and throwing it back against the tunnel wall. It sparked and twitched before going silent. She turned to Bren. That was only one. More will come. They reached the end of the tunnel and entered a large chamber filled with screens and data panels. Tira moved quickly, activating the systems. Ancient lights flickered to life. A large map appeared on the center screen, showing the stars and marked coordinates. Bren stepped closer. What is that? That is the core flames path. Bren looked confused. The what? Tira touched a symbol on the screen. The core flame is a weapon hidden in deep space. It was created in secret, even for many Jarn leaders. It gathers energy from dead stars and can release it in a single burst, strong enough to destroy entire planets. Bren stared at the map. He saw the path marked in red. At the end of it were human colonies, dozens of them. They're going to use it against us, he said. Tira nodded. Not just you. They want to remove anyone they cannot control. Humans are too free, too independent. That scares them. Bren felt a weight settle in his chest. He had seen war, but this was something darker. This was planned destruction. We have to stop it. He said. Yes, Tira replied. But first, we need to get this data out. Suddenly, alarms blared. The system had sent a signal. The scouts had locked onto their position. They're here, Tira said. She pulled a storage drive from the system and handed it to Bren. Take this. If I fall, you must deliver it. Bren hesitated. I'm not leaving without you. Tira gave a small smile. Then stay close. They rushed out of the chamber. More drones entered the tunnel ahead, blocking the way. Tira threw a smoke pod and opened a side panel in the wall. A maintenance path. They crawled through it, close and fast. Sparks flew as the drones cut behind them. Bren's heart pounded. Every turn felt like the last. Finally, they burst out of the tunnel, back into the light of the dead battlefield. A drone followed, leaping toward Bren. Tira turned and tackled it, throwing it into the wreckage. She stabbed her blade through it, ending the threat. Breathing hard, they stood side by side. "We need a ship," Bren said. "I know where we can find one," Tira replied. Bren looked at her, his trust growing. "Then lead the way," he said. Together, they ran across the broken land, no longer enemies, but allies with one purpose: to stop what was coming. Tira and Bren moved fast across the rough land of Varka's moon. Behind them, the sound of Jaran drones still echoed in the air. They didn't speak much, but their steps matched with purpose. The warning Tira carried was too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. After an hour of travel, they reached a wide canyon filled with twisted metal and half-buried ships. Tira stopped and pointed to a broken tower in the distance. "There," she said. "That was once a Jaran command post. Under it is a vault. That's where I hid the second part of the data before I escaped." Bren looked at the tower. It leaned to one side like it could fall any moment. "That doesn't look safe," he said. "It isn't," Tira replied, "but it holds the final piece we need." As they got closer, Bren saw broken walkways and collapsed walls. The ground was unstable, but Tira led with steady feet. She knew the path well. Inside the tower, everything was dark and silent. Dust hung in the air. They moved through twisted halls until they reached a sealed metal door. It was half covered in rubble. Tira knelt beside it and placed her hand on the wall. The armor on her wrist glowed, sending a signal to the door. Slowly, with a loud hiss, the metal began to move. The door opened, revealing a narrow staircase going deep underground. "Welcome to the vault," Tira said. They stepped inside. The air grew colder. Lights flickered on as Tira walked, reacting to her presence. The walls were smooth and lined with panels of strange symbols. Bren looked around. "No one ever found this." "No," she said. "Most thought it was destroyed in battle." "I made sure of that." At the bottom of the stairs was a large chamber. In the center stood a tall structure like a pillar. It glowed faintly. Round it were screens, storage drives, and a large console. "This is where I kept the main records," Tira said. "It proves the core flame exists and shows how they plan to use it." She walked to the console and started typing. The screen lit up with a star map. Bren recognized some of the names: Earth, Mars, Titan. Others were unknown to him. Tira pulled out the small drive she had given him earlier and placed it into the console. "The core flame is moving," she said. "It is not just a weapon. It is also alive in some way. It listens to those who control it." Bren stepped closer. "Where is it now?" Tira tapped the map. A red dot blinked in the far corner of the screen. "Here," she said. "Inside. A hollowed comet. It is being prepared for launch." Bren leaned forward. "That's near Haven Colony. There are thousands of people there." Tira looked at him. "That is only the first target. After that, they will destroy the colonies one by one." Bren felt his stomach twist. "We have to warn command." "Yes," Tira agreed. "But if we go directly, they may not believe me. They may arrest me. That's why I need the full data." She pulled another drive from the pillar and added it to the console. The screen changed, now showing moving ships, heat patterns, and energy signals. It was clear proof of Jaran movement in the sector. "This is what I came to get," Tira said. "With this, your leaders will understand the truth." Just then, a sound echoed through the chamber. A faint hum that quickly turned into a loud rumble. Tira's eyes narrowed. "They followed us." Bren turned. "How?" "We were careful. The vault is old," she said. "Some of its systems are still linked to Jaran networks. When I opened it, they found us." The wall shook as something above exploded. "We need to get out," Bren said. Tira pulled both drives and secured them in her armor. "Follow me." They ran back up the stairs as dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, the sky had turned orange from smoke. A Jaran dropship hovered above the canyon, sending out spider-like drones. Bren and Tira dashed into the open. The ground shook again as more drones landed. Tira spun and fired a pulse from her wrist. One drone burst into sparks. Bren took cover behind a rock and tossed a shot grenade. It landed under two drones, sending them crashing to the ground. Won't make it on foot, Bren said. There's a ship hidden nearby, Tira replied. I used it when I escaped last time. They ran toward the far end of the canyon. Drones followed closely. One fired a net at Bren, but Tira slashed it midair. Her armor flared with energy as she blocked another blast with her arm dot at the edge of the canyon, half buried under stone, was a small black ship. It had no markings and looked like it hadn't flown in years. Tira pressed her palm to its side. The ship hummed and opened. Get in, she said. Bren jumped into the pilot's seat. Tira followed, sealing the hatch behind them as the engines started. Drones fired at the hull. The ship lifted off, shaking as blasts struck its sides. We won't survive long unless we get out of range, Bren said. I'll handle that, Tira replied. She took the controls and pushed the ship forward. It darted into the sky, dodging fire and passing through clouds of smoke. The dropship tried to follow, but Tira sent a flare backward. The flare exploded, blinding the dropship for a few seconds, just enough time to escape. The stars above welcomed them as they broke past the atmosphere dot inside the ship. Bren leaned back, breathing hard. We have the proof, he said. Tira nodded. Now we just need someone to believe us. The small ship flew fast through space, far from the ruined moon of Varka. Inside, Bren sat beside Tira, watching the stars blur outside the cockpit window. Behind them, the Jarn were already looking. The stolen data was dangerous, it revealed. Everything: the core flame's location, its movement, and the targets. Tira kept her eyes on the control screen. Her hands moved quickly over the controls. Her focus was sharp, but her voice was calm. We can't go straight to your command center, she said. They'll scan the ship, and they'll find me. Most humans still see Jarn as enemies. They won't shoot you on sight, Bren replied. Not if I speak first. They won't listen. Tira said, not while they're afraid. Bren leaned back. He understood. Fear had driven both sides for too long. Trust was hard. But they didn't have time to wait. He looked at the data drive on the console. Where can we go? He asked. There's a human station near the border. Tira said, not military. A science post. They have a wide-range signal tower. If we can upload the data there, it will reach your command and other colonies at once. Bren nodded. Then we go there. But before they could set the course, a warning flashed on the screen. Tira narrowed her eyes. They found us. Behind them, Jarn fighters appeared from a dark patch of space. Sleek and fast, they closed in quickly. Tira pulled the ship into a dive, trying to avoid their fire. Laser blast lit up the black sky around them. Hold on, she said. Bren grabbed the seat as the ship rolled. One blast hit their rear shield. The ship shook, and lights flickered. We can't outrun them forever, he said. I don't plan to, Tira replied. She pressed a switch on the console, opening a hidden panel. Inside were small pods, old Jarn tech. Tira picked one and handed it to Bren. This is a phase beacon, she said. I can use it to send the data if the ship is lost, but you'll have to protect it. What do you mean if the ship is lost? Bren asked. They're not trying to capture us. They want to destroy the data. The ship shook again. Another blast hit their wing. A small fire sparked on the side panel. Tira grabbed the extinguisher and put it out quickly. She moved fast, calm as ever. Bren looked at her with respect. She was not just a fighter. She was someone who never gave up, no matter what. The screen showed the fighters getting closer. Tira gripped the controls tighter. We'll lead them into the belt. The asteroid belt, Bren asked. Isn't that dangerous? Very, Tira replied. That's why they won't expect it. She turned the ship sharply toward a dense field of floating rocks and broken stations. The fighters followed, but the path was narrow. The ship weaved between large stones and old wreckage. One of the Jarn fighters struck an asteroid and exploded. In flames, the shock wave rocked their ship, but they kept moving. One down, Bren said, holding on. The second fighter was still behind them. It was smarter, dodging every rock and closing in. Tira looked at the screen, then at the controls. I'm going to disable it, she said. Bren raised his eyebrows. How? Watch, she said. She flew the ship near a large asteroid, then dropped speed. The enemy moved forward to attack. Tira spun the ship around and fired a pulse blast directly at the rock behind the fighter. The asteroid cracked in half. A large chunk struck the fighter's wing, sending it spinning into space. Bren let out a breath. "You're a good pilot." Tira didn't smile. Her face was focused. "We're not safe yet." She guided the ship out of the belt and toward the science post. It came into view, a small station floating above a quiet planet. Its lights were soft, no weapons, no guards, just researchers and signal towers. "We'll dock there," Tira said. "You'll carry the data. I'll stay inside the ship." Bren looked at her. "You should come with me." "They won't accept me," she said. "You have a better chance." The ship landed gently. Bren grabbed the data drive and stepped out. Tira stayed in the shadows of the cockpit. She watched as Bren entered the station. Inside, the scientists were surprised to see a ship arriving without warning. One of them, a tall man with gray hair, stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Halen," he said. "We don't get visitors often." "Who are you?" "My name is Bren," he replied. "I need access to your tower. It's urgent." Dr. Halen looked uncertain. "What's this about?" Bren took a deep breath. "It's about a weapon called the Core Flame. I have proof. We need to warn command." He showed the drive. Halen took it, still unsure, but he saw the fear in Bren's eyes and nodded. "Follow me," he said. They walked to the tower room. Halen placed the drive into the main system. The screen lit up, showing the map, the weapon, and the targets. "This is real," Halen said. "I'll send the signal now." Outside, Tira waited, watching the sky. Her sensors picked up another signal. Her eyes narrowed. She opened a comm line to Bren. "Hurry. They're coming." Bren replied, "We're almost done." But Tira knew the truth. The Jarn were not finished yet. Another ship was approaching fast. It wasn't a fighter. It was a destroyer. She closed the link and stepped out of the ship. Inside the station, the signal went out, a message to all colonies, all fleets. The warning was sent. Bren looked at the screen. "We did it." Then the station shook. Lights flashed. The destroyer had arrived. Tira stood between the station and the enemy. Her armor shifted, glowing brighter than before. She was ready to fight. The science station shook again. This time the sound was louder, and lights above flickered. Bren ran to the window and looked out. A Jarn destroyer had entered orbit. Its black shape covered part of the stars, and its weapons were already charging. The warning signal had been sent, but now they had to survive. "Tira," he said into his comm. "The destroyer is here. You need to leave. Now." Tira's voice came calmly through the speaker. "No. If I leave, they will target the station. They want the drive destroyed. I will not let them." Bren gritted his teeth. He turned to Dr. Halen. "We have to protect the data backup." Dr. Halen nodded. "The signal was sent, but if they destroy this place, many colonies may not receive it in time. Our backup tower is underground in the lab. I'll leave the others there." Bren looked at the station crew scientists. Not fighters. They were scared but willing to follow. "Go," he said. "I'll help Tira." Outside, Tira stood on the metal landing pad, her armor glowing brighter with each step. Her tall figure faced the destroyer without fear. She pressed a control on her wrist. A panel on her ship opened, and a small turret extended, locking onto the destroyer's main cannon. As the destroyer prepared to fire, Tira raised both arms. A blue shield spread from her armor and covered the front of the station. When the first blast came, it struck the shield hard. The energy cracked, but it held. Inside the station, the lights blinked. Bren was watching from the hallway. He couldn't just stay there. He ran back toward the landing pad. As he reached the door, he saw Tira standing firm. Her feet were planted like stone, her eyes fixed on the enemy. He stepped beside her. "You shouldn't be out here," she said without looking at him. "I said I trust you," he replied. "That means I fight beside you." Tira didn't argue. Instead, she handed him a small device from her belt. "This is a pulse detonator. Aim it at the destroyer's lower turret. If we can disable that, the station has a better chance." Bren took it and nodded. Cover me. He ran toward the edge of the station platform. The destroyer had moved lower, close to the surface. Small drones flew out of its belly, heading straight for them. Tira's armor changed shape as she activated her full suit. Blades extended from her arms. With fast, smooth motion, she leapt forward, cutting through the first wave of drones. Her body moved like water, every turn precise, every strike perfect. Bren reached a small tower near the edge and climbed up. He aimed the detonator at the destroyer's weak point. The lock was slow, but steady. More drones flew in. One almost hit him, but Tira jumped across the platform and knocked it away with a sharp kick. Sparks flew, and the drone fell apart in the air. Now, Bren, she shouted. He pressed the trigger. A pulse shot from the device and struck the destroyer's turret. The weapon sparked, cracked, and then exploded. A fireball lit the sky. Tira jumped back to his side as pieces of metal rained down around them. But the destroyer was still in the fight. Another cannon on its side turned toward the platform. Back to the ship, Tira said. They ran together. As they reached the ship's ramp, the destroyer fired again. The blast hit near the station tower, shaking the ground. Dust and fire filled the air inside the ship. Tira grabbed the controls. I'll draw its fire. You take the backup data and get to the underground lab. You must keep the message safe. Bren turned to her. What about you? I'm not leaving until this station is safe, she said. Bren paused, then nodded. He ran down the ramp and toward the lab entrance. Fire burned around him. He passed broken metal and sparks, but he didn't stop in the lab. Dr. Halen was setting up the backup signal tower. Is the data safe? Bren asked. Yes. But if the destroyer hits us again, it may be lost. Bren placed the second drive into the system. We have to send it now. Outside, Tira flew the ship between the station and the destroyer, firing small pulses and dodging blasts. Her ship was smaller, but faster. She sent signal jammers and decoy flares to confuse the enemy. One blast hit her wing. The ship spun, but she recovered quickly. She turned the ship upward and fired all weapons. A few shots struck the destroyer's command deck. Inside the station, the backup signal activated. A second wave of alerts moved across the galaxy. Colonies would now know the truth. The core flame was real, and it was moving. Back on the ship, Tira saw the destroyer pull back. It was retreating. She smiled faintly and opened a call. Bren. The signal worked. They are falling back. Bren answered with relief in his voice. You did it? No. She said. We did. She returned to the landing pad as the destroyer disappeared into space. Fire still burned across the station, but the worst had passed. Bren met her near the ship. Her armor was scorched. Her face had a small cut, but she stood tall. You protected them, he said. She looked at him. You gave them the truth. Now we have a chance. Behind them, the crew of the station came out of hiding. Some stared at Tira with fear, others with wonder. No one spoke. Tira looked at Bren. They will never fully trust me, she said. Bren shook his head. Trust isn't given once. It's built. And today, you earn more than most ever will. She nodded. For the first time. Her eyes looked softer. I'm ready for the next step, she said. And together, they turned toward the stars. Tira stood near the edge of the landing pad. The battle at the science station had passed. But the war was not over. The signal had gone out. The galaxy now knew about the core flame. But knowing was only the beginning. The real fight had yet to come. Inside the station, Bren helped Dr. Halen finish copying the backup data. Tira walked in, her armor cracked in places, but her eyes steady. It's time, she said. We know where the core flame is. We can't wait for fleets or approval. If we don't move now, it will fire before anyone reaches it. Dr. Halen looked at them. You'll be going alone. Bren nodded. We have no choice. The destroyer bought time for the Jaran faction. We're still the closest. Tira pulled up the map. The core flame is inside a hollowed-out comet. The weapon moves slowly but has full shielding. It can only be shut down from the inside. Can we get inside? Bren asked. Yes, Tira replied, but only if we go now. They left the station quickly. Tira's ship, still damaged, had just enough power for one final jump. The engines roared as they lifted off, leaving the station and its people behind. As they traveled through hyperspace, Bren looked at the screen. So this weapon, what will it do exactly? Tira spoke calmly. It collects energy from dead stars. It builds power inside the comet. Then it releases that energy in a focused beam. It doesn't just destroy buildings or cities. It breaks planets. Bren stared at her. That's not a weapon. That's extinction. That's what the Jaran want, she said. They fear humans. They fear what they cannot control. They want silence. Bren looked out at the stars. Then will be the noise. After some time, the ship dropped out of hyperspace. The comet came into view. It was massive, black, and surrounded by thick clouds of dust. It looked like a giant rock drifting in space. But sensors told a different story. Energy readings were off the charts. Core flame detected, Tira said. As they got closer, the surface of the comet began to shift. Hidden panels opened. Defense drones flew out in waves. Tira took control of the ship. Hold on. The ship dodged and spun as lasers fired. Bren watched the shields drop lower. Can we make it? He asked. Only one way to find out, she said. She flew the ship toward a small opening near the side of the comet. The entrance was narrow, made for smaller Jaran craft. Their ship scraped the walls as it passed through. Inside was dark and hollow. The inner walls of the comet glowed with strange lights. Energy pulsed through massive tubes that fed the weapon core. We're inside, Tira said. But we have to move on foot now. They landed in a chamber and stepped out. The floor was metal, not rock. Machines buzzed. The air felt strange, heavy with power. This whole comet is alive, Bren said. Yes, Tira replied. And it knows we are here. Suddenly, lights came on across the chamber. A tall figure stood, a head covered in dark silver armor. His voice echoed through the room. Tira, you return at last. Bren stepped forward. Who's that? My old mentor, Tira said. Now the leader of the Jaran faction. The armored figure walked closer. You betrayed us for a human. And for what? Weakness? I saw truth, Tira said. This is not power. This is fear disguised as strength. The leader raised his hand. Then you will fall with the rest. A fight began. Tira moved fast. She charged at him, blades clashing. Sparks flew with each strike. The floor trembled from the power in their weapons. Bren ran toward the main console. His job was to shut down the weapon while Tira held off her old master. He reached the core control panel. It was locked with Jaran code. He pulled out the drive Tira gave him and plugged it in. The screen lit up. Tira's single quotes as voice came through the comm. You must disable the power flow. Use the left switch, then overload the center crystal. Bren did as told. The machines around him groaned. The lights blinked. The weapon's glow started to fade. Tira and the leader fought across the platform. Her armor was damaged. He was stronger. He pushed her back with a hard hit. She fell. Bren saw it happen. Tira, she didn't move. The leader turned to him. Now, human, I'm this. He walked toward Bren, slow but deadly. Bren looked at the console. The power was not yet gone. He made a choice. He pulled a tool from his belt and smashed the power converter. The machine sparked wildly. Alarms rang out. The core began to overload. The leader paused. What have you done? I stopped your silence, Bren said. Just then, Tira stood again. Her armor flickered, but she held a blade of blue energy. She moved behind her old master and struck. The blade sank through his side. He dropped to his knees. Tira stood over him. Your fear ends here. He fell, silent. The comet shook. The energy inside was unstable now. Tira ran to Bren and pulled him away. The core is going to explode, she said. Can we get out in time? He asked. No, but we can use the escape pod. They rushed to the small pod connected to the wall. It was only made for two. Tira sealed the door and launched it. As they flew away, the comet behind them cracked. Light burst from within. The core flame exploded. Fire and dust spread across space. The weapon was gone. Inside the pod, Bren sat beside Tira. She had a deep cut on her shoulder, but her eyes were calm. "You saved the colonies," he said. "You saved me," she replied. They looked at the stars outside the window. No more fear. No more hiding. Only the soundless beauty of space and the quiet hope of something better. The escape pod floated in silence, far from the burning remains of the comet. Pieces of metal and ash drifted behind them like dust in a breeze. Inside the pod, Tira and Bren sat side by side. Their eyes watched the screen as the core flames. Destruction spread across the empty sky. They had done it. The weapon was gone. The plan to erase human worlds had failed, but the journey was not yet over. Bren leaned his head back and took a deep breath. "I didn't think we'd make it." Tira looked at him, her voice soft. "We made it because we trusted each other." The pod's systems beeped. A signal from a nearby human ship came through. They had been rescued. The medical bay on the Alliance cruiser was quiet. Bren sat on the edge of the bed, a bandage around his arm. His clothes were torn, but his spirit was steady. Tira stood near the window. Her armor finally removed, her body covered in long scars from battles long past. A general entered the room. His name was Commander Rin, known for his careful nature and distrust of anything not human. He looked at Tira with sharp eyes, then turned to Bren. "Your report matches what our sensors picked up. You stopped a planetary weapon. You risked your life and disobeyed direct orders." Bren sat straighter. "I'd do it again." Commander Rin nodded. "You saved millions. You'll face no punishment." He turned to Tira. "And what about her?" "She saved me," Bren said. "She fought her own people to stop a war. She's not our enemy." Rin studied her for a long time. "She was once part of a force that tried to break us, and she turned against them," Bren said, "because she saw what was right." The room stayed silent. Finally, the commander spoke. "She will not be imprisoned. But she is not a citizen. The Alliance cannot fully protect her. She walks her own path." Tira didn't speak. She only nodded once. The commander left. Later that evening, Bren stood on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Ships came and went outside, moving like silver birds through space. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Tira walked up beside him. She held a small toolkit in her hands. It was the same one he had used to fix her armor the first time they met. "I believe this belongs to you," she said. He smiled. "You keep it. Might come in handy." She shook her head. "You gave me more than tools. You gave me something I didn't think existed." "What's that?" he asked. "A reason to believe." He turned toward her. "Where will you go now?" She looked out at the stars. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere far. I need to find out who I am without war." Bren's voice was calm. "You know, not all humans will fear you. Some might even welcome you." "I'm not ready," she said. He didn't push. He only nodded. She stepped closer. "But I need to say this. When we first met, I asked if you trusted me. You said yes. And you meant it." "I still do," Bren replied. Tira smiled, a soft one, the kind that didn't need words. She looked stronger than ever, not because of armor or weapons, but because of the peace in her heart. She turned to leave. Bren called out, "Tira." She stopped and looked back. "Trust yourself. That's all that matters now." She gave a short bow, then walked away. Weeks passed. Bren returned to his job as an engineer, now stationed at a major Alliance research base. But things had changed. He had changed. The old routines didn't feel the same anymore. The stars didn't just look beautiful, they looked alive, full of stories, full of voices that deserved to be heard. He often found himself staring at the sky, thinking of Tira, wondering where she was, wondering if she found peace. One day, a message arrived. It had no signature, no origin code, just a short sentence. "I am learning to trust. Thank you." Bren smiled as he read it. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. Some things didn't need to be said. Some stories didn't need to be finished. They only needed to begin. Far across the stars, on a quiet green world, Tira walked through a field. No armor, no weapons, only the wind, the grass, and the sun above, she looked up at the sky, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't a warrior. She was simply free.